So, Chelsea, the Nats are not the headline grabbers at this point at the winter meetings with the Machado buzz and Stanton getting dealt to the Yankees, Connie signing. But there's a little bit of buzz building about Jay. How serious are the Nats as far as pursuing him, and would they be able to make it work as far as, Boris is demanding, or the contract stipulations seem to be in the $200 million range. I think that's a bit high.
There's no
He'll
way
come down
I
from
would
that
give
number.
him $200 million.
But even if it's not quite that high, would the Nats be able to afford him?
It'd be close. I mean, they're not far from really hitting some pretty big luxury tax penalties this year, and I don't think it necessarily needs to really change their offseason, but it certainly means that if there's a Jake Arrieta deal, it has to be something ownership is behind. And, we kind of already knew that because he's a Boris guy, and that's how that works. But I would say that if Rizzo is left to his own devices, that is not a priority. He'd probably rather allocate that money elsewhere. And but sometimes with these big Boris guys, it isn't Rizzo's responsibility. So I think we'll have to wait and see. But I would put the chances at very, very low, unless Jake Arrieta is still on the board in February, and then all bets are off.
I mean, $200 million's nuts. I understand that Boris is shooting for the stars here, but I mean, he's 31. His numbers have declined over the last 3 years. I mean, he's still a good pitcher. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's still a 3.5 ERA type of guy, but he was on and off the DL last year. I mean, there's just no way I would give him 200, maybe $100 million, maybe, but not two.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's kind of lost in all that speculation, which I think is fueled by the Boris side, obviously, to get the price up, is, I mean, the Nats, the Cubs made him a qualifying offer. And under the new CBA, if the Nats want to sign him, they give up their second-round pick, their fifth-round pick, and $1 million of international money, which they really, they treasure both of those things and have had really good luck using them for controllable, obviously cost-effective players. So I just don't see it. They've never really liked signing guys, who had the QO, since Murphy, I think. It's, nothing about it feels like an easy fit. But again, none of these Boris guys, Wieters, people like that were an easy fit. And when they were on the board in February, all of a sudden, here comes Scott Boris talking to Ted Lerner and their Nationals.
Right. So if you had to bet, would you say that an Arrieta deal gets done, just not at that number, or does he go elsewhere?
I think he goes elsewhere. I think that's sort of the general consensus, both within the room for the Nats and within the industry. I mean, they're just not going to be the highest bidders if there's even a few bidders, because they're just not that motivated. But, I think they'd rather go get, a more cost-effective starter via trade if that's available. But, yeah, right now I'm not at all convinced that they're going to make any major move at Arrieta.
I know you mentioned Garrett Cole from the Pirates. Talk to me about him.
He's someone I can't really totally gauge their interest on, but just fit. He's got 2 years of control left. Scott Boris guy, which doesn't necessarily matter on the trade market, but always feels like it does. And they match up well with the Pirates. They're trying to trade McCutchen. You trade Andrew McCutchen. The one place the Nats can deal from right now is the outfield, whether it's Michael Taylor or one of the young guys. Right. So, it just feels like a deal that could get done. But there are others. The A's have some less, prominent guys. Maybe Chris Archer's available, though I've never heard him linked to the Nats at all. So there's guys out there that you could trade for, give up prospects, maybe even shed some salary on the major league payroll and have for a few years. But, Jake Arrieta's name is the one we'll hear until we don't anymore.
Right. So now that Stanton is in New York, that's obviously one team that was a potential landing spot for Harper. But there's still plenty of teams that will be willing to give him the money. So that's just one team off the list. But I'm wondering, from the people you're talking to down there, what's the buzz on Harper? Is it a situation where he just is going to go to the highest bidder? Do the Nats still have a legitimate chance of keeping him? What are you hearing down there?
I don't know that they've had a legitimate or really good chance of keeping him for a long time. I think we've all sort of known that. But the stand going to New York was, oh, wow, they're all suddenly, maybe that brings the Nats back in. But what I've heard from people down here since is maybe it doesn't, maybe the Yankees could find room for Harper, or, not having them in the bidding doesn't change things. It's not like Bryce was only going to go to New York or something like that. I mean, he's a big stage guy, and the big stages have big money. So I think it might take the Yankees off the list, but I'm not even sure of that. And, I think it was already a long enough list that the Nats were going to have to really come out of nowhere on him and put up some money they've never been comfortable putting up. And I don't know that that's going to happen, but, a lot can change. I mean, we saw with Stanton, the whole situation for the Yankees changed. So,
right.
But I think right now the sense is he's probably going elsewhere. He's probably going to take big money, and the Nats are probably going to get outbid on him.
Yeah, and they have to have a plan, and I'm sure Rizzo has one